All right, here we go. Welcome. We are at day number 2 for anxiety and the mind. So this is a series all about understanding anxiety from a mind, body, heart perspective, looking at life coaching, at Ayurveda, and really giving us a more holistic view on anxiety, with the goal of giving you maybe some new information that could be helpful in helping you to feel better. So today we're focusing on the mind. Tomorrow we'll be focusing on the body, and the heart on Thursday. So before I start, I just want to say that I'm not a doctor and this is not medical advice, but informed from my own experience and education in the fields of life coaching, Ayurveda, and yoga. I also want to acknowledge that I live, work, and play on Indigenous land here in Anchorage. That is the Dena'ina people. Okay. So I try to keep these nice and short, under 10 minutes. So that means I have to really focus on make things very quick and succinct, which is awesome because I think that helps in simplifying and understanding things. So I'm going to approach this topic from 2 different doors. Door number 1 is going to be from a mindset, from the coaching perspective on anxiety. We're going to look at some mindset. And then door number 2 is using Ayurveda and understanding a concept there to help us understand anxiety. So door number 1, from the mindset perspective, what is anxiety? Anxiety is a feeling. And a feeling is a vibration or a sensation that you have in the body. It's not like feeling hungry or cold or tired so much as it's kind of on a different level, but it is something that you feel in the body. Like anxiety, I know for me, can be like a heaviness in my stomach, or a tight feeling in my chest. Some people feel like a constriction in their throat or their head. This head just like kind of like out in outer space and kind of about ready to float away. So that is the experience of anxiety as a feeling. And the feelings that we have, they are in response to our brain, to how our brain is processing things. The brain emits chemicals that then change the stasis of the body, that create those emotions, those feelings. So the anxiety, it starts in the brain and how it's processing things as life in general. And I talk a lot about how we process life. So I don't want to get too detailed in that, but there is so much that we can explore there. But I do. So what I mean by processing in general, it's like this idea of that we have input that comes into our brain from outside of us, and then our brain it like does its thing. It's like a I don't know, a spaghetti maker, right? You put the dough in, and then it squeezes it through, and the result of how it processes is our feelings. So looking at how you're processing the outside world can really help to give you some clues onto why you might be feeling anxious. A classic way to look at this is the glass half full or the glass half empty. Notice that if your brain is processing that glass as being half empty, that perspective on the glass, that involves perhaps some feelings of scare, or some thoughts of scarcity, of not having enough, some fears, some worries, that glass, you make it mean that something negative that creates anxiety then. Inversely, the glass being half full, if your brain looks at that and is like, wow, I've got a half a glass full of delicious water, that's amazing. I'm grateful for that. I've got so much. I can do so much with that. Then you're going to generate very different feelings. You're going to generate feelings of peace and being settled and content. Now, the only thing that's changed, like the glass is out here, the only thing that's changed is how you're processing it in your brain. And this, I know we hear this story a lot, but it's so important because it shows that the story of the glass, it happens in our brain, and we are in charge of our brains. So becoming aware of those stories are so important to helping you to understand why you're feeling anxious and to start to do something to change your story so you can reduce that. Okay, so that's the mindset piece. Let's go to door number 2 and look at an Ayurvedic perspective. So Ayurveda is awesome because the world is complex, we're complex, but Ayurveda creates models that helps to simplify things so that we can understand and work with complex systems. So one of these models that it uses is the elements, the 5 elements. The 2 I'm going to talk about today are air and ether. Air is basically, you can think like wind, like a hurricane, and ether is like empty, open space. In Ayurveda, anxiety is it happens when you have too much air and ether in your life. So if you think about, just think about nature, and you've got the ground, here's a little flower, and you've got air up here, and it's moving around like a hurricane, like wind, and just whipping through your brain. That is anxiety. So we can often feel excess air as anxiety, overwhelm, worry, fear. And one big component, one big area to look at, okay, what creates this air is input. So when we have too much input or the wrong quality of input, that can increase the amount of air. So think about when you have a lazy Sunday with nothing on your to-do list versus a day where you are packed solid. You have so much more input coming in, right? And your brain, like that can increase the amount of anxiety. The same is true so input, it comes in through your senses. So your eyes, your ears, what you hear, and like the news and people talking and all of the screens and all of this information. So that the amount of information, if there's too much, that can increase the air, increase anxiety. Also the quality, if it's things like the news lately, that can increase anxiety. This is all very simple, we know this, but the cool thing about this is that if we know we have too much air, we're all up here in the air and ether, then how do we feel better? We balance it with the opposite, which is ground, which is anything that grounds us. And there's a lot of things that ground us. But if we're thinking about input, one of the few of the ways that you can find groundedness is to reduce the amount of input coming into your senses. So that's less of everything. I love putting earplugs in my ears, putting an eye pillow on when I do some yoga. Meditation is one of the best ways to reduce input. It's so effective on so many levels. First of all, you are stepping out of your story. You're putting the processing on hold and you're reducing all of the input. And that gives your brain some time to just settle down and ground. So if meditation is something that you do, that's awesome. Keep at it. 20 minutes is a fantastic goal to get to someday. If you don't yet do it, just 1 minute a day to create a habit is going to help you begin to build some relief here. So I'd like to leave you with the question to consider is how might this concept of air and like a hurricane in my brain and having too much input, how might that be happening in my life? And the goal there is just to create some awareness, just to start pinging your brain to think about it. So, all right. That's what I have for you today. I think we're just a little bit over time. I hope that this is helpful. If you have questions, let me know. And if you are really curious about what this approach could look like for you with your own anxiety journey, I've set time aside to talk with anybody who wants to do a little bit of coaching and figure this out. So complimentary sessions, just reach out if you're interested. And join me again tomorrow, same time. We're going to look at the body and the relationship with anxiety and some of the things you can do there. The recording will be available on Facebook. So yeah, that's what I have for you today. Thanks so much for coming, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.